I'm going to kind of try and go through a little bit of like what it was like and try and do it kind of quicker because there's so much that God has done in my life, and I want to be able to share like just how good God is. So, I never expected to be a Christian. I never expected to walk in this life ever. I was born into a Jewish family. My parents moved from Ukraine to America probably 7 months before I was born. And, they worked so hard to give us good lives. They both got degrees in America. They worked their butts off, and all they wanted was to provide for their children. And so the pressure was on for me from a young age. I was supposed to live to this higher degree because of how hard it was for them to do everything for us. And I had a brother also who was 4 years older than me, and for some reason I just wasn't smart. I couldn't live up to their expectations. I had so much trouble in school. They took me through so much tutoring and got me tested, to see if I had some learning disabilities. Nothing came back, but I just couldn't understand things. I couldn't read. My mom, who just had learned English herself, would sit there with me hours teaching me how to read. And so part of growing up was the emotions. I knew my parents wanted what was best for me, and they tried to do everything right. But growing up in America and seeing the American culture and how my friends' parents acted towards them, I started to feel like my parents didn't love me because they were so hard on me, and I felt like I was never good enough, never smart enough, never skinny enough. They would say whatever they thought, and for them it was to try and make me better. And it got lost in the cultural context because I was growing up in America and seeing everyone else, and they were grew up in a completely different lifestyle. So I ended up I lost my train of thought. Okay, so around 11 years old, I tried drinking. It was not to escape anything. It was just okay, me and my other friends were camping, and it was all of our parents are Russian, so Russian speaking, Ukrainian, that type of culture. So there's alcohol around, so we're okay, we're just gonna drink. It did not become a habit or anything at 11. And then by the time I was 14, 15, drinking, smoking weed was a normal thing. The following year, pills, and it continued. By 19, I was doing heroin. And I was so good at keeping everything looking good on the outside that my parents had no clue. I went away to college. At 16 years old, I got a job, and I always worked. And by that age, I started getting better grades in school. So I was so good at keeping everything looking nice on the outside. And I remember I was sitting in my dorm room in college, and I realized I really had a problem because I had brought back a bunch of pills from when I was on Christmas break, and I worked and I got a bunch of money, and I brought back a bunch of pills, and I was just sitting on my dorm room floor with them all in my hand, I felt so much better with them there, and I needed them, and that's what I would look forward to, and that's how I would survive each and every day of my life. And I realized I had a problem, and I had another friend who also had a problem, and I told him, I was listen, I think I'm an addict. I'm and I think you are too. And he didn't take it well. He slammed the door, blah, blah, blah. I found him in AA later, years later. We encountered each other, and he came to terms. But so I basically failed out of school, out of college that year, and I came back home. I went to community college, got a little job and whatever, and that's when I got into heroin. And it became a lifestyle, driving down to Kensington every day, gotta get my fix, gotta get it to be okay, to be able to function. And there was times I can't say I was in full-fledged lifestyle of a drug addict, because I still tried to keep everything good on the outside. I still tried to appear normal. I don't know if everyone could tell. My parents couldn't still, and there was a time where my brother overdosed, and I found him. Meanwhile, in the same time, I was doing heroin in my room, and when he overdosed, I started giving him CPR. We called the ambulance, they Narcaned, and all of that. He was okay, But me and my mom were there like screaming at him, being like, what do you think you're doing? Like, what's wrong with you? Well, I'm like such a hypocrite, like doing the same exact thing, like what? And like that night, I remember getting all my stuff, putting it down the sewer, and telling myself like, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm gonna change, I'm gonna live a different life. But the next day I was going back to the same thing because that's, I couldn't survive with it, I couldn't function without it. And probably 6 months later, I don't even know how long, maybe a year later, I overdosed myself, and that's when my parents really found out. In the same week, I found out that I was pregnant. My parents found out, they took me to get an abortion, and like their solution was to lock me up in my room, take my phone, take the car, and just like leave me there. They told me like, okay, you need to look for a job. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like what job? Like I can't cope with myself. I can't function. I need this to be okay. Like it's like the farthest thing from my mind. And after probably about a month of that, I asked him like, please send me to rehab. I can't do this like under your crazy rules. And I went away, and that was like the first step of my recovery. I did not get clean from that time. That was just like the first baby step. I came back, I thought I got this. I thought like I really learned everything I needed to learn, and I'm gonna do great, and it's not that hard. And it was that hard, and I went right back to it probably like a day or a few later. And I was in my next rehab, I don't know, 6 months later. I was like doing IOP in between then, like tons of things my parents tried to do that they heard was good and took me to. And from there is when I went to my first recovery house, and that's really like where things changed. And I'm really a big advocate of recovery houses because, with the type of parents I had who like wanted to do everything to help me, but didn't have the right resources and the right knowledge, like I needed a recovery house, I needed structure, I needed a place where someone wasn't gonna, just let things slide because they love me, that the same rules would apply to everyone. And so, that was not my one and only recovery house. I went on to live in like 12 more after that because every 30, 60, 90 days I would relapse. And it was like whenever I would get a thought in my mind, like I want to go use, it was like I was like a robot. Like I have to go and pick up these drugs and like use them. Like I couldn't control myself. I had like no ability, like, instant gratification, do whatever makes you feel good, you stub your toe, you're happy, whatever, And the good thing though about being in a recovery house is that like I was mandated to do some things. So I had to be in AA or NA, I had to, look for a job, I had to like do all these different things, and like while being submerged in like recovery in AA and NA, I did really, really want to be clean. I really wanted to stay clean. Like it was really a desire in my heart, a deep desire. And, in those programs, they tell you need a higher power. And I fully believe, like I did the steps, I always had a sponsor, I got commitments, like I did everything I was supposed to because I really, really wanted to do better. And basically like, during that whole time, I was praying to God every day. I always believed in God from a young age. Yeah. I always believed in God from a young age, and like I always, for some reason, thought I was going to go to heaven. I don't know why. As a young girl, my dad would tell me about God, and he would tell me about heaven. I was always so interested. Like I always wanted to know more. Yeah. And I was praying, and I would pray every day, like, God, take my will, take my life, guide me in my recovery, show me how to live. And I would be like, God, like, please allow my will to align with your will. Like, allow it, take away the desires that I have. I want to do what you want for me. And, but still, like, that was still, I wasn't fully there because I got another thought in my head and I went and used. But the last time it was different because the last time I used, I just felt like, I felt God wanted me to be here. and do these things and like get my life together. And I was all the way down here just doing whatever Allison wants, whatever feels good in the moment, instant gratification, you know? And like I felt so convicted. And like all I really wanted to do, like at that time, was just wanted to have a normal life. I just wanted to be stable. I wanted to be able to hold a job and not get fired from a job. I wanted not to be lazy. Like, that's it. Like, just bare minimum. Just be a functioning person in the world. I didn't want a lot. I really didn't. And basically, like, I was just so desperate. I was begging, trying to get into rehab that last time for like 3 days. I got in. And, you know, the moment, like, I was feeling a little better, I took my will back. But, like, there was a time where, like, it was dumb, and, you know, me and this girl were trying to smuggle drugs into the rehab, and, like, God spoke to me in that moment when she, like, ran off of the campus, and he's like, look, like, do you want to keep doing things your way? Do you want to keep taking your will back the moment things get a little bit better? Or do you want to do things my way for real? And, like, I had a decision to make at that moment, and I was like, and I played the tape out, too. Like, I played this, okay, if I run off the campus, and I'm like, they're gonna kick me out, and I'm back to, like, square one? Why? And so I made a decision. I was like, okay, God, I'm gonna really, like, follow you for real 100% this time. And it started off with the little things, like, I was against littering, so I would go and pick up, like, pieces of trash that I saw on the ground and throw them out, and I was so lazy at the time. It was hard. Like, it was a big sacrifice to, like, walk over and, like, pick it up and then have to walk all the way to the trash can. Like, it was rough. Woo! It was rough. And little things, like, seeing people at rehab, and they looked upset, like, going over and talking to them and, like, actually caring for someone other than myself, you know? So I started just these small things, and don't get me wrong, because, like, I was still not following all the rules. I thought I was doing better, but it still wasn't 100% when I look back at the times. But I got out, I got into a recovery house, my, like, 11th recovery house, and I submerged myself in NA, I got a sponsor, I started doing everything, and you know, like, that desire to use went away. Like, God removed that from me. And, like, that's honestly, all right. That's honestly the only reason why I'm clean today, because I have not had that desire. And, like, I don't know where I would be at if I was still getting those cravings. But not just that, like, so I started, like, you know, living a decent life. Like, I had a job, and, like, I was holding it for 2 years, or, like, whatnot, and I was, like, going to meetings, and I was sponsoring girls, and I, you know, shared my, like, testimony, like, spoke for my 1 year, whatever. Like, I was doing a lot of new things, but I was still struggling in a lot of areas. Like, I wanted to lose weight, I wanted to quit vaping, I wanted to get off Seroquel, I wanted to figure out what kind of career I'm going to have, I wanted to go back to school, and I had no clue how to do any of that. And about when I had a 1.5 years clean, like, my dad was like, he knew that I was trying to, like, figure out what to do with my life, and he's like, hey, I have a friend whose daughter works in human resources, maybe it's something you could be good at, you should hit her up, like, just talk to her. And this girl happened to be basically, like, 10 years older than me, had gone through rehab, had gone back to school at 30 years old, she was also, like, Russian speaking, she was also, comes from, like, a Jewish family, but she was a Christian, because she had gone through a 6-month Christian program in Germany, out of all places, and, and she, like, our first conversation, it's like, she was my person. We talked for, like, 45 minutes, like, and she invited me to home group at her church. Like, it was a home group she ran. And I was like, home group? Like, I know what home group is in AA and NA, but, like, home group in church, I'm like, do I have to wear a long skirt? Like, I don't know anything about being a Christian or Christian life. And I went, even though it was uncomfortable, it was something new, like, never had really gone to any type of Christian thing. And like probably the first or second time I went, I got saved. Like I remember being in the parking lot. Yeah. I remember like walking home from there and I just felt so different. And like the number one thing you're taught when you're Jewish is like you're not supposed to believe in Jesus. That's all you know. You might not know anything else, you're not supposed to believe in Jesus. But everything was changing in my life. And I was like, there's no other answer to this, like other than Jesus, you know? Like this feels different than AA feels. Like as much as I'm grateful for AA and NA, you know, it felt so different. And like, you know, I came to her and I told her all the things I wanted to do, and like, you know, she helped me like come up with a plan to like lose weight because she had the same problem. For my vaping, like I prayed for 3 days and I asked God to remove that desire, and like on the third day, one of the vapes broke and the other one I lost, and I had zero desire to vape anymore. I was completely free of that, and I haven't touched one since, because if I go near it, you know, who knows what might happen. And, you know, Seroquel, like I started coming off of that slowly, was able to get off of it. Yeah, I didn't sleep well for a good year, but I was no longer dependent on a mood and mind altering substance to like help me sleep for the rest of my life, because who wants that? And I was probably going, I don't know how long I was going to church, but I started tithing a real 10%, which is like also a difficult thing because when you're Jewish, and like my family's not even that Jewish, but some of the stereotypes are real.
That's racist.
So my whole life, my parents always taught me like, you know, save your money, don't give it out to people, like, you know, don't, like, you gotta keep it for yourself. And it was, so like, I was raised like that, like, gotta save all my money, blah, 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 and, you know, I started off like maybe 5%, 8%, and then like I made it to the 10%, and like, it felt so good to be able to separate that love of money from my heart, that I was saying like, okay, God, you're more important to me than any type of worldly possession. And guess what? Like, and this doesn't always work like this, but in that moment, like 2 weeks later, my friend had a job that opened up at her job, and like it was supposed to be for like a much higher position, and last minute, they switched it to like an entry-level position and kept the pay, and I was able to get a job there. You know, like, what? And it was like $10 more per hour than my previous job. Like, I don't want to say that it's always how it works. We should be separating, you know, money from our hearts regardless. But it's, yeah, God provides, God blesses in so many different ways. And so, you know, it's just like I wanted to go back to school. I went back to school. Bob's giving me like a 1 minute thing. I graduated college in December, and like, something I wanted to do my whole life, and like I finally did it. But not just that, but like I was able to start running like women's groups. You know, that's something I never wanted to do. I never had a desire. I never wanted people looking at me. I didn't want to talk in front of people. I was so uncomfortable, all the above. And I had a good leader who pushed me and motivated me to do more, to like get into the uncomfortable. And you know, today like I run a women's Bible study at our church, and you know, it's like my biggest desire is to be that person that my leader was for me, for someone else, to see someone's life completely change 100%, like just from start to finish. Like I would love nothing more than to just spend my time doing that for someone else, because it's been so impactful. Like because someone else experienced God and they desired to do something like that for me, like I'm forever grateful. My life has forever changed, and like Jesus has completely changed my life. And one last thing I forgot to mention, when I got saved, like I remember that block that I had on my mind most of my life that I couldn't understand. I couldn't like do school and stuff like that. It got removed, like, and like people at my work were asking me like, what's happening, what's going on? And I was just walking around like this God love bubble for like a month, and it was amazing, the most amazing like spiritual encounter that I've ever had with God. And you know, God can do it for me, and He can do it for you too. Pray, have faith, trust in Him, ask to do His will and not your own will, you know, and let Him do the rest. Surrender. You know, it's not about what we want. God has something so much greater and bigger and better for our lives. So that's all I got. Thanks for letting me share.
Alison. God is doing a wonderful work in our life.